Hello, hello. How are we doing? Hello. How are we doing? There we are. What's up, all? Yeah, we've got a bit of a quiet evening here. Can you hear me okay? Tired? Yeah. Yeah, well, that launch isn't happening for another 3 hours, is it? So, surely not very much happening right now. Bunch of people getting dressed in some fancy pants suits. Is that what's going on? Dobry večer. Sorry, the OG Hambo. Um, I know it's very exciting. Who's sleeping? I'm sleeping. Yeah. I'm in my suit. Why aren't you in yours? What suit? Why? Space suit? I'm not going anywhere. My feet are firmly on the planet. Thank you very much. Um, you wish you were sleeping at work. Oh. Suit and tie. Well, what, I don't know. Why is that ICP, Gary? What are you up to? You, as we used to say when someone would come to the pub in a suit in England, wedding, funeral, or court. Where are you off to? Um, yeah, NASA have got a thingy thing. NASA have got a thing that things. NASA have got a thing that things. Uh, and yeah, thank you, Kermit985. Appreciate that. I appreciate that indeed. You have a Wednesday seat. It's Wednesday. All of the above. Oh, you got a busy day then, isn't it? Eh? Wedding, funeral, then court, or is it court, funeral, then wedding, or is it a funeral, court, and wedding? As I said that already. These artsy people. I know. I know. Yeah, they're spinning around the moon. Oh dear, 3 hours. It's supposed to be 10:22 scheduled anyway. As you touch up your hair colour, naughty. Um, this blue suits me. Well, thank you. A little bit of navy. It's darker in the video than it is in real life. As long as there is a feast after. I should warn you, by the way, that the hair is drastically going to change tomorrow. Because I'm going to be on set. Yeah, I got a part exactly. It's the only time I get a haircut basically. So the shirt too, the light blue, yeah. A mullet. That's it. We're gonna go for a halibut mullet. Jules. We're not ready. Spill the tea. Oh, I can't really. I've signed an NDA. Did I beat Logan out for that part? I beat him with my leak. The Three Musketeers beard is probably not staying. I've had enough of it as well. I think this is the longest I think it's ever got. I'll be sad in some ways because I do like twiddling with it. Mm. But at the same time, uh, look at it. There you go. Nah, boy, neither of us got that. Um, yeah. Well, I'm sorry. It's not my. It's not my. It's not my decision. just how it goes. You know, they want me to what, a hype train already? Exactly, ICP Yowie. That's the way to. Thank you, thank you. Throw me some, throw me um, some joy. Uh, I'm getting paid, so that's yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. I'm going to play a dead body. I think I can say that much without giving it away. I play someone who's alive and later is a dead body. So there it is. All right. Well, I got my pole mug. I need some water. Needs a bit of overall attention, that tank. Um, it's not about no. They don't want it. They don't want it. Look at all these little plink plinks, the gems, the yays and the yeses and the bits and the cheers. I'm appreciating that. So many shiny little diamonds going. Wow, wow. Can't buy taste. I know. Idiots. They're not shaving my head now. They're just going to give me a trim. But they do. They said they want to lose the beard. Thank you, Alison. Thank you, Santa Green, Dranica Mary, Booblina, Ziggy Wee, Babush Toad. You give me a look at this. Craig, Kermit, like a son of a gun. I see Piawi. The hype train's going. Oh, the hype trains are going. Save the mustache. I thank you, Creepology. Nice one, Becca. There we go. I'm not going bold. I'm just gonna get a trim. He's scared of losing the goons. I know. You didn't miss much, Jade. It's okay. I mean, I say that with love. What I mean to say is we've been chatting. I've not been reading yet. Bold Zig? No, I'm not going bold. We're just getting a cut, apparently. I don't know. Oh, look at that. Oh. Oh no. Oh. Sorry guys. Yeah. I got I'm filming. What's going on there? Wow, 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 wow. Wow, 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 wow. Yo, look at that. Oh, hey, yep. Nyarlathotep. I can never say this one. Nyarlathotepkat. Is that like an Egyptian name? Thank you for the gift sub there. Yeah, well, I'm not choosing that. But you know, we'll stay bold or not. Thank you, Sonogran. Cactalius, good morning, team. Where have you been? You live in the Czech Republic, don't you? What? You've been sleeping the whole time, emerging like a night owl. Thank you, Jude. Rudy Spears, Rude Spears, Rude Vespers, F's Vespers, Rude Vespers, Rude Vespers. All right, there we go. Good afternoon. In drama camp, one time they made us all play corpses. That's fun. What's like ham? Three kinds of potatoes. What? Very important not to breathe. I know. Karfreitag is fish and potato salad. Easter brunch is herb, quark, and rolls, and so many hard-boiled eggs. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Cactalius has risen. Hi, Cactum. It's so much. I'm a hit here. Sorry. Studying cyanobacteria. Have you ever heard of it? Cyanobacteria. No. Do Czechs not have ham for Easter? They have ham at every other point. Depends though, isn't it? Because if you're a good, what's the word? If you're a good little Catholic, you'll have no fish on. You'll have fish on the Friday and no meat. You're trying to discern. Well, you're not far wrong. I mean, where does the word start? Where does it end? No, we never had that, Alison. No, it's the only. There we go. Ham's for rich people. Czechs are usually not rich. Oh please, shunker. There's shunker in every house. Cactalius, really. What kind of shower head you got? Did you get the part from the audition you went to and stumbled upon Logstep? No, nothing to do with that at all. This is for a German TV project. Um, Good evening, everyone. Perry, 1983, indeed. Drunk driving is the American way of life. Oh, it's not only American. Sauerbraten. Nordrhein-Westfalen, yeah. That man had forgiven his keys. Jesus, there's two little chats going in here. Those rich little Pragas stuffing themselves with shunker while we eat moles and squirrels. It's quite delicious, isn't it? I have to say. Choo choo. Yeah, well, they were trying to put you off drink driving. Yeah, I guess that's how it works. I don't know. All right, so gang, this is the second to last Poe stream. As of next week, we're going to read something else. I think we might go with a bit of Arthur Conan Doyle and or some what's his nuts? What's the horror one? Oh, my brain is not braining. Me, I look tired. I am tired. It's been Lovecraft. There we go, Lovecraft. Yeah, it's been a longer week. Also, it's the full moon, and it's full moon coming up, so it's all that energy vibing around. We did pretty well. Never bet the devil your head. Uh huh. Well, well, well. Well, there's a few little ones here, all racked one after the other. We did the parables last week, didn't we? I really can't find my pencil now, which is a little irritating. Oops, irritating. Otherwise, I would mark them up. But anyway. Kartek. You don't want to eat mole. They're greasy. I don't think you want to do that. Garfina at the pencil. I'm gonna miss the mustache just for that. Have we done a descent into a maelstrom? I don't know if we have. Couldn't find it, could we? Can I find it? A descent into the maelstrom. I don't think it's here. Not here, you know. All right, look. We've got philosophy of starting from Philosophy, Furniture, A Tale of Jerusalem, The Sphinx, The Man of the Crowd, Never Bet the W Ahead, and they're all quite short. So I think we're going to go in there. The Man of the Crowd, yeah. But we'll start with A Tale of Jerusalem. I think it's only 4 pages, and then 4 pages, and then 7 pages, and then 8 pages. So we'll see how we go with that. Were they drinking? Why do they drink like Europeans? Loves it. But first of all, we are going to read a poem. Let's read a poem. They drink like Americans, which means what? Hardly at all. First time chat. Hey, Vimpelcom. Final bosom counter starting up. No, Sunday will be the final bosom counter. We'll do one on Sunday. Yes, our team is launching in 3 hours. There we go. That's what I figured. The OG Hambone, yeah. No, you have a reputation for drinking. You just have a reputation for not drinking very well. So it's not my fault. I didn't make that. Depends on the area, I'm sure. The bells, Esmeralda. We read Annabelle Lee. No, and where did we get to on the bosom counter last time? Was it 31 or 32? Did we hit 32? Yeah, there's not much more. 33? Did we hit 33? Okay. All right. Who thinks 31? Who thinks 33? Rookie numbers. 'Twas 33. The Conqueror Worm, The Valley of Unrest. The Sleeper. We read The Silence last time. Dreamland. A Dream Within a Dream. Eldorado, Farewell. I don't think we've read Annie yet, have we? Is that actually 33 bosoms? My hair color is confusing. Why is my hair color confusing? It's brown. It's 32. Why? Is that because you think it's 32? Annie, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay, Annie? Well, I'm not drinking at the moment, actually. You like being difficult. Don't listen to Mary, it's 33. Screw you, Mary. Put down with a 32. It's Auburn. I think it's just the lights. Unpacking new knitting needles. Is there any greater joy than this? No. I am being nice. It's called British being nice. Would you rock the surfer look again? What does that mean? Like, I just need to, yeah. Boomer is tired and cranky. Bubliner, two things. No. We've decided it's 33. Shell necklace and all. Yeah, exactly. One of those weird wooden dolls with the kind of dreadlock string hair. All right, we're going to read for Annie. Thank heaven, the crisis, the danger is past, and the lingering illness is over at last, and the fever called living is conquered at last. Sadly, I know I am shorn of my strength, and no muscle I move as I lie at full length. But no matter, I feel I am better at length. And I rest so composed now in my bed that any beholder might fancy me dead, might start at beholding me, thinking me dead. The moaning and groaning, the sighing and sobbing are quieted now, with that horrible throbbing at heart. That horrible, horrible throbbing. The sickness, the nausea, the pitiless pain have ceased with the fever that maddened my brain, with the fever called living that burned in my brain. And oh, of all tortures, that torture the worst has abated the terrible torture of thirst. For the naphthaline river of passion accursed, I have drunk of a water that quenches all thirst, of a water that flows with the lullaby sound from a spring but a very few feet underground, from a cavern not very far down underground. Ah, let it never be foolishly said that my room is gloomy and narrow, my bed. For man never slept in a different bed, and to sleep you must slumber in just such a bed. My tantalized spirit here blandly reposes, forgetting or never regretting its roses, its old agitations of myrtles and roses. For now, while so quietly lying, it fancies a holier odour about it of pansies, a rosemary odour commingled with pansies, with rue and the beautiful Puritan pansies, and so it lies happily, bathing in many a dream of the truth and the beauty of Annie, drowned in a bath of the tresses of Annie. She tenderly kissed me, she fondly caressed, and then I fell gently to sleep on her breast, deeply to sleep from the heaven of her breast. When the light was extinguished, she covered me warm, and she prayed to the angels to keep me from harm, to the Queen of the angels to shield me from harm. And I lie so composedly now in my bed, knowing her love, that you fancy me dead. And I rest so contentedly now in my bed, with her love at my breast, that you fancy me dead, that you shudder to look at me, thinking me dead. But my heart is brighter than all of the many stars in the sky, for it sparkles with Annie. It glows with the light of the love of my Annie, with the thought of the light of the eyes of my Annie. Four breasts. He does have his priorities with that woman, absolutely. Annie be Annieing. Annie be Annieing. Hop frog, jumping frog, Albuquerque, 462. Feeling jealous of Annie. I almost said it, Jade, but I didn't. What? 462. You're making me forget. The philosophy of furniture. Person od kulture. Right, I'm going to make myself a bit cozier. So Annie is not okay. Definitely not. Oh shit. God, my God, I've got to tie this thing together. Honestly. Leggy. She probably likes boomers as well. What is wrong with boomers? There's nothing wrong with boomers. Knee stream. Got shorts on, didn't I? Careful, Grandpa. Less of that. Although I could be a grandpa. I know someone from back in England. We used to hang out when I was like, wasn't a mate, but he was a mate of a mate. And he's got grandkids. I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ, it making me feel old. The philosophy of furniture, kids. A mate of a mate, yeah. Yeah, that's it, mate of a mate, innit? Do you know what I mean? The chair is out to get you. The chair is out to get me. I am old. I'm middle aged. Hello, Mangotron. My boyfriend bullies by saying you have a bad camera and that you're filming in the basement. The camera is on the laptop. I've not yet invested in anything better. I'm not filming in the basement. That's curtains behind me, which are blocking the window. So there. The scuffed setup. I'm not taking this tonight. But talking about decoration, by the way. In the internal decoration, if not in the external architecture of their residences, the English are supreme. The Italians have but little sentiment beyond marbles and colours. In France, meliora probant deteriora secutora. The people are too much a race of gadabouts to maintain those household proprieties, of which indeed they have a delicate appreciation, or at least the elements of a proper sense. The Chinese and most of the Eastern races have a warm but inappropriate fancy. The Scotch are poor decorists. The Dutch have, perhaps, an indeterminate idea that a curtain is not a cabbage. In Spain, they are all curtains, a nation of hangmen. The Russians do not furnish. The Hottentots and the Kickapoos are all very well in their way. The Yankees alone are preposterous. How this happens, it is not difficult to see. We have no aristocracy of blood, and having therefore as a natural and indeed as an inevitable thing, well, thank you, Miss Effect, fashioned for ourselves an aristocracy of dollars, the display of wealth has here to take the place and perform the office of the heraldic display in monarchical countries. By a transition readily understood and which might have been as readily foreseen, we have been brought to merge in simple show our notions of taste itself. To speak less abstractly, in England, for example, no mere parade of costly appurtenances would be so likely, as with us, to create an impression of the beautiful in respect to the appurtenances, I've never heard of this word, themselves, or of taste as regards the proprietor. This for the reason, first, that wealth is not in England the loftiest object of ambition as constituting a nobility, and secondly, that there the true nobility of blood, confining itself within the strict limits of legitimate taste, rather avoids than affects that mere costliness in which a parvenu rivalry may at any time be successfully attempted. The people will imitate the nobles, and the result is a thorough diffusion of the proper feeling. But in America, the coin's current being the sole arms of the aristocracy, their display may be said, in general, to be the sole means of aristocratic distinction, and the populace, looking always upward for models, are insensibly led to confound the two entirely separate ideas of magnificence and beauty. In short, the cost of an article of furniture has at length come to be with us nearly the sole test of its merit in a decorative point of view. And this test, once established, has led the way to many analogous errors, readily traceable to the one primitive folly. There could be nothing more directly offensive to the eye of an artist than the interior of what is termed in the United States, that is to say, in Appalachia, a well furnished apartment. Its most usual defect is a want of keeping. We speak of the keeping of the room as we would of the keeping of a picture, for both the picture and the room are amenable to those undeviating principles which regulate all varieties of art. Very nearly all the same laws by which we decide on the higher merits of a painting suffice for decision on the adjustment of a chamber. A want of keeping is observable sometimes in the character of the several pieces of furniture, but generally in their colors or modes of adaptation to use. Very often, the eye is offended by the inartistical arrangement. Straight lines are too prevalent, too uninterruptedly continued, or clumsily interrupted at right angles. If curved lines occur, they are repeated into unpleasant uniformity. By undue precision, the appearance of many a fine apartment is utterly spoiled. What? We're almost millennial, but we're not. Curtains are rarely well disposed or well chosen in respect to other decorations. With formal furniture, the curtains are out of place. An extensive volume of drapery of any kind is, under any circumstances, irreconcilable with good taste. The proper quantum, as well as the proper adjustment, depending on the character of the general effect. Carpets are better understood of late than of ancient days, but we still very frequently err in their patterns and colors. The soul of the apartment is the carpet. From it are deduced not only the hues, but the forms of all objects incumbent. A judge of common law may be an ordinary man. A good judge of a carpet must be a genius. And yet we have heard discoursing of carpets with the air of de moutons qui rêvent, fellows who would not and who could not be entrusted with the management of their own moustaches. Everyone knows that a large floor may have a covering of large figures, and that a small one must have a covering of small, yet this is not all the knowledge in the world. As regards texture, the Saxony is alone admissible. Brussels is the preterpluperfect tense of fashion, and Turkey is a taste in its dying agonies. Touching pattern, a carpet should not be bedizened out like Rickery Indian, all red chalk, yellow ochre, and cock's leather. In brief, distinct grounds and vivid circular or cycloid figures of no meaning here are median laws. The abomination of flowers, or representations of well-known objects of any kind, should not be endured within the limits of Christendom. Indeed, whether on carpets, or curtains, or tapestry, or ottoman coverings, all upholstery of this nature should be religiously arabesque. As for those antique floor cloths still occasionally seen in the dwellings of the rabble, cloths of huge, sprawling, and radiating devices, striped, interspersed, and glorious with all hues, among which no ground is intelligible, these are but the wicked invention of a race of time-servers and money-lovers, children of Baal and worshippers of Mammon, Benthams who, to spare thought and economize fancy, first cruelly invented the kaleidoscope and then established joint stock companies to twirl it by the steam. Glare is a leading error in the philosophy of American household decoration, an error easily recognized as deduced from the perversion of taste just specified. We are violently enamored of gas and of glass. The former is totally inadmissible within doors. Its harsh and unsteady light offends. No one having both brains and eyes will use it. What about LEDs then? A mild, or what artists term a cool light with its consequent warm shadows, will do wonders for an ill furnished apartment. Never was a more lovely thought than that of the astral lamp. We mean, of course, the astral lamp proper, the lamp of Argand with its original pane ground glass shade and its tempered and uniform moonlight rays. The cut glass shade is a weak invention of the enemy. The eagerness with which we have adopted it, partly on account of its flashiness, but principally on account of its greater cost, is a good commentary on the proposition with which we began. It is not too much to say that the deliberate employer of a glass cut shade is either radically deficient in taste or blindly subservient to the caprices of fashion. The light proceeding from one of those gaudy abominations is unequal, broken, and painful. It alone is sufficient to mar a world of good effect and the furniture subjected to its influence. Female loveliness, in especial, is more than one half disenchanted beneath its evil eye. In the matter of glass, generally we proceeded upon false principles. Its leading feature is glitter, and in that one word, how much of all that is detestable do we express? Flickering, unquiet lights are sometimes pleasing to children and idiots, always so, but in the embellishment of a room they should be scrupulously avoided. In truth, even strong, steady lights are inadmissible. The huge and unmeaning glass chandeliers, prism cut, gas lighted, and without shade, which dangle in our most fashionable drawing rooms, may be cited as the quintessence of all that is false in taste or preposterous in folly. The rage for glitter, because its idea has become, as we before observed, confounded with that of magnificence in the abstract, has led us also to the exaggerated employment of mirrors. We line our dwellings with great British plates, and then imagine we have done a fine thing. Now, the slightest thought will be sufficient to convince anyone who has an eye at all of the ill effect of numerous looking glasses, and especially of large ones. Regarded apart from the reflection, the mirror presents a continuous, flat, colorless, unrelieved surface. A thing is always and obviously unpleasant. Considered as a reflector, it is potent in producing a monstrous and odious uniformity, and the evil is here aggravated not in merely direct proportion with the augmentation of its sources, but in a ratio constantly increasing. In fact, a room with 4 or 5 mirrors arranged at random is, for all purposes of artistic show, a room of no shape at all. If we add to this evil, bye, Mary. If we add to this evil the attendant glitter upon glitter, we have a perfect farrago of discordant and displeasing effects. The veriest bumpkin, on entering an apartment so bedizened, would be instantly aware of something wrong, although he might be altogether unable to assign a cause for his dissatisfaction. But let the same person be led into a room tastefully furnished, and he would be startled into an exclamation of pleasure and surprise. It is an evil growing out of our republican institutions, that here a man of large purse has usually a very little soul which he keeps in it. The corruption of taste is a portion or a pendant of the dollar manufacture. As we grow rich, our ideas grow rusty. It is therefore not among our aristocracy that we must look, if at all in Appalachia, for the spirituality of the British boudoir. But we have seen apartments in the tenure of the Americans of modest means, which, in negative merit at least, might vie with any of the or cabinets of our friends across the water. Even now, there is present to our mind's eye a small and not ostentatious chamber with whose decorations no fault can be found. The proprietor lies asleep on a sofa, the weather is cool, the time is near midnight. We will make a sketch of the room during his slumber. It is oblong, some 30 feet in length and some 25 in breadth, a shape affording the best ordinary opportunities for the adjustment of furniture. It has but one door, and by no means a wide one, which is at one end of the parallelogram, and but 2 windows, which are at the other. These latter are large, reaching down to the floor, having a deep recess, and open on an Italian veranda. Their panes are of a crimson tinted glass, set in rosewood framings more massive than usual. They are curtained within the recess by a thick silver tissue adapted to the shape of the window and hanging loosely in small volumes. Without the recess are curtains of an exceedingly rich crimson silk, fringed with a deep network of gold and lined with silver tissue, which is the material of the exterior blind. There are no cornices, but the folds of the whole fabric, which are sharp rather than massive, have an airy appearance. Issue from beneath a broad entablature of rich gilt work which encircles the room at the junction of the ceiling and floors. The drapery is thrown open, also, or closed by means of a thick rope of gold loosely enveloping it, and resolving itself steadily into a knot. No pins or other devices are apparent. The colors of the curtains and their fringe, the tints of crimson and gold, appear everywhere in profusion, and determine the character of the room. The carpet, of Saxony material, is quite half an inch thick, and is of the same crimson ground, relieved simply by the appearance of a gold cord like that festooning the curtains, slightly relieved above the surface of the ground, and thrown upon it in such a manner as to form a succession of short, irregular curves, one occasionally overlaying the other. The walls are prepared with the glossy paper of a silver grey tint, spotted with the small arabesque devices of a fainter hue of the prevalent crimson. Many paintings relieve the expanse of the paper. These are chiefly landscapes of an imaginative cast, such as the fairy grottos of the Stanfield or the Lake of Dismal Swamp of Chapman. There are, nevertheless, 3 or 4 female heads of an ethereal beauty, portraits in the manner of Sully. The tone of each picture is warm but dark. There are no brilliant effects. Repose speaks in all. Not one is of small size. Diminutive paintings give the spotty look to the room, which is the blemish of so many a fine work of art overtouched. The frames are broad, but not deep and richly carved, without being dulled or filigreed. They have the whole lustre of burnished gold. They lie flat on the wall, and do not hang off with cords. The designs themselves are often seen to better advantage in this latter position, but the general appearance of the chamber is injured. But one mirror, and this is not a very large one, is visible. In shape it is nearly circular, and is hung so that a reflection of the person can be obtained from it in none of the ordinary sitting places of the room. 2 large low sofas of rosewood and crimson silk, gold flowered, form the only seats, with the exception of 2 light conversation chairs, also of rosewood. There is a pianoforte, rosewood also, without cover, and thrown open. An octagonal table, formed altogether of the richest gold-threaded marble, is placed near one of the sofas. There is also, without cover, the drapery of the curtains has been thought sufficient. 4 large and gorgeous Sèvres vases, in which bloom a profusion of sweet and vivid flowers, occupy the slightly rounded angles of the room. A tall candelabrum, bearing a small antique lamp with highly perfumed oil, is standing near the head of the sleeping friend. Some light and graceful hanging shelves, with golden edges and crimson silk cords with golden tassels, sustain 2 or 3 hundred magnificently bound books. Beyond these things there is no furniture, if we except an argan lamp with a plain crimson tinted glass ground shade, which depends from the lofty vaulted ceiling by a single slender gold chain, and throws a tranquil but magical radiance over all. Well, hang on. If you talk, it's not my birthday. What's going on? I'm Gen X kids, all right? Yeah, right. Hey, my girl. Yeah, I thought because he was talking about American furnishings, I haven't been doing American accent for old Poe, but I figured this, if there's any, this makes more sense. We're going to fire straight in with the next one while you still argue about whether I'm a boomer or not. Um, I mean, look, I can confirm one thing. I'm only 3 apples tall. I have a calendar. I just don't use it. Ugh. I know, but it's April Fool's, isn't it? All right, A Tale of Jerusalem. I've got no idea what this is going to be about. Oh my word, there's lots of names. Here we go. A Tale of Jerusalem. Intensos rigidam in frontem ascendere canos passus erat. Lucan de Caton. A bristly boar. Translation. Let us hurry to the walls, said Abel Fittim to Buzi ben Levi and Simeon the Pharisee on the 10th day of the month Tammuz in the year of the world 3941. Let us hasten to the ramparts adjoining the gate of Benjamin, which is in the city of David, and overlooking the camp of the uncircumcised, for it is the last hour of the fourth watch, being sunrise, and the idolaters, in fulfillment of the prophecy of Pompey, should be awaiting us with the lambs for the sacrifices. Simeon, Abel Fittim, and Buzi ben Levi were the Gizbarim, or sub-collectors of the offering in the holy city of Jerusalem. Verily, replied the Pharisee, let us hasten, for this generosity in the heathen is unwanted, and fickle-mindedness has ever been an attribute of the worshippers of Baal. That they are fickle-minded and treacherous is as true as the Pentateuch, said Buzi ben Levi, but that is only toward the people of Adonai. When was it ever known that the Ammonites proved wanting to their own interests? Methinks it is no great stretch of generosity to allow us lambs for the altar of the Lord, receiving in lieu therefore 30 silver shekels per head. Thou forgettest, however, Ben Levi, replied Abel Fittim, that the Roman Pompey, who is now impiously besieging the city of the Most High, has no assurity that we apply not the lambs thus purchased for the altar to the sustenance of the body rather than of the spirit. Now, by the 5 corners of my beard, shouted the Pharisee, who belonged to the sect called the Dashers, that little knot of saints whose manner of dashing and lacerating the feet against the pavement was long a thorn and a reproach to less zealous devotees, a stumbling block to less gifted perambulators. By the 5 corners of that beard, as a priest, I am forbidden to shave. Have we lived to see the day when a blaspheming and idolatrous upstart of Rome shall accuse us of appropriating to the appetites of the flesh the most holy and consecrated elements? Have we lived to see the day when— Let us not question the motives of the Philistine, interrupted Abel Fittim. For today we profit for the first time by his avarice or by his generosity. But rather let us hurry to the ramparts, lest offerings should be wanting for that altar whose fire the rains of heaven cannot extinguish, and whose pillars of smoke no tempest can turn aside. That part of the city to which our worthy Gizbarim now hastened, and which bore the name of its architect, King David, was esteemed the most strongly fortified district of Jerusalem, being situated upon the steep and lofty hill of Zion. Here, a broad, deep, circumvallatory trench, hewn from solid rock, was defended by a wall of great strength, erected upon its inner edge. This wall was adorned, at regular interspaces, by square towers of white marble, the lowest 60 and the highest one 120 cubits in height. But in the vicinity of the gate of Benjamin, the wall rose by no means from the margin of the fosse. On the contrary, between the level of the ditch and the basement of the rampart sprang up a perpendicular cliff of 250 cubits, forming part of the precipitous Mount Moriah. So that when Simeon and his associates arrived on the summit of the tower called Adoni Bezek, the loftiest of all the turrets around Jerusalem, and the usual place of conference with the besieging army, they looked down upon the camp of the enemy from an eminence excelling by many feet that of the pyramid of Cheops, and by several that of the temple of Belus. Verily, sighed the Pharisee as he peered dizzily over the precipice, the uncircumcised are as the sands by the seashore, as the locusts in the wilderness. The valley of the king hath become the valley of Adomim. And yet, added Ben Levi, thou canst not point me out a Philistine, no, not one, from Aleph to Tau, from the wilderness to the battlements, who seemeth any bigger than the letter Jod. Lower away the basket with the shekels of silver, here shouted a Roman soldier in a hoarse, rough voice, which appeared to issue from the regions of Pluto. Lower away the basket with the accursed coin which it has broken the jaw of a noble Roman to pronounce. Is it thus you who evince your gratitude to our master Pompeius, who, in his condescension, has thought it fit to listen to your idolatrous importunities? The god Phoebus, who is a true god, has been charioted for an hour, and were you not to be on the rampart by sunrise? Ada, Paul, do you think that we, the conquerors of the world, have nothing better to do than stand waiting by the walls of every kennel to traffic with the dogs of the earth? Lure away, I say, and see that your trumpery be bright in colour and just in weight. El Elohim, ejaculated the Pharisee, as the discordant tones of the centurion rattled up the crags of the precipice and fainted away against the temple. El Elohim, who is the god Phoebus? Whom does the blasphemer invoke? Thou, Buzi ben Levi, who art read in the laws of the Gentiles, and hast sojourned among them who dabble with the teraphim. Is it Nergal, of whom the idolater speaketh, or Ashima, or Nibeth, or Tartak, or Adramelech, or Anamalech, or Sukobenith, or Dagon, or Belial, or Baal Perith, or Baal Pero, or Baal Zebub? Verily it is neither, but be aware how thou lettest the rope slip too rapidly through thy fingers, for should the wicker-work chance to hang on the protection of the yonder crag, there will be a woeful outpouring of the holy things of the sanctuary. By the assistance of some crudely constructed machinery, the heavily laden basket was now carefully lowered down among the multitude, and from the giddy pinnacle the Romans were seen gathering confusedly round it. But, owing to the vast height and the prevalence of a fog, no distinct view of their operations could be attained. Half an hour had already elapsed. We shall be too late, sighed the Pharisee, as the expiration of this period he looked over into the abyss. We shall be too late. We shall be turned out of office by the Catolim. No more, responded Abel Fittim. No more shall we feast upon the fat of the land. No longer shall our beards be odorous with frankincense, our loins girded up with fine linen from the temple. Raka, swore Ben Levi. Raka, do you mean to defraud us of the purchase money, O holy Moses? Are they weighing the shekels of the tabernacle? They have given the signal at last, cried the Pharisee. They have given the signal at last. Pull away, Abel Fittim, and thou, Buzi ben Levi, pull away, for verily the Philistines have either still hold upon the basket, or the Lord hath softened their hearts to place therein a beast of good weight. And the Gizbarim pulled away, while their burthen swung heavily upward through the still increasing mist. Bushoher, as at the conclusion of an hour, some object at the extremity of the rope became indistinctly visible. Bushoher was the exclamation which burst from the lips of Ben Levi. Bushoher, for shame! It is a ram from the thickets of Engedi, and as rugged as the valley of Jehoshaphat. It is a firstling of the flock, said Abel Fatim. I know him by the bleating of his lips and the innocent folding of his limbs. His eyes are more beautiful than the jewels of the pectoral, and his flesh is the honey of Hebron. It is a fatted calf from the pastures of Bashan, said the Pharisee. The heathen have dealt wonderfully with us. Let us raise up our voices in this psalm. Let us give thanks on the shwam, on the psaltery, on the harp, on the hugab, on the sithin, and the sackbut. It was not until the basket had arrived within a few feet of the Gizbarim that a low grunt betrayed to their perception a hog of no common size. Now El Echamonu, slowly and with upturned eyes, ejaculated the trio as, letting go their hold, the emancipated porker tumbled headlong among the Philistines. El Emanu, God be with us. It is the unutterable flesh. Suspicious lack of bosom. Auto mod badge goes to Bubbly now, as it often does. Do you need to ask? I didn't do nothing, Governor. I didn't do nothing. Just dogging around. What's my dream mustache? What, for me? I always wondered what it would be like to have a full-on Dali thing going on. I mean, that's some dedication right there. What are your feelings on being shorn like a sheep soon? Well, excuse me. I was thinking to get rid of the tash. I kind of had enough of it for now. What kind of mustache do you imagine Chat to have? Handlebar mustache. Chop down here. Communal mustache. You're going to make a really bad joke about what? Or Groucho Marx, sure. Oh, yeah, probably the weird corner mustache. What's the weird corner mustache? Do you think that mustache was thought of as weird before it became synonymous with that unmentionable fella? Oh yeah, pencil stash. The old Errol Flynn. In like Flynn. Charlie Chaplin. Yeah, exactly. Charlie Chaplin had it. Can I braid my mustache? No, I don't think it's long enough. Not long enough. Once it's out, everyone likes them. Like Adidas sneakers a couple of years ago. Going with Adams. Oh, yes. All right. Which one? Alison, you requested a particular one. The Man of the Crowd. Okay, this is after the Sphinx. So, the Sphinx. During the dread reign of cholera in New York, I had accepted the invitation of a relative to spend a fortnight with him in the retirement of his cottage ornée on the banks of the Hudson. We had here around us all the ordinary means of summer amusement, and what with rambling in the woods, sketching, boating, fishing, bathing, music, and books, we should have passed the time pleasantly enough, but for the fearful intelligence which reached us every morning from the populous city. Not a day elapsed which did not bring us news of the decease of some acquaintance. Then, as the fatality increased, we learned to expect daily the loss of some friend. At length we trembled at the approach of every messenger. The very air from the south seemed to us redolent with death. That palsying thought indeed took entire possession of my soul. I could neither speak, think, nor dream of anything else. My host was of a less excitable temperament, and although greatly depressed in spirits, exerted himself to sustain my own. His richly philosophical intellect was not at any time affected by unrealities. To the substances of terror, he was sufficiently alive, but of its shadow as he had no apprehension. His endeavours to arouse me from the condition of abnormal gloom into which I had fallen were frustrated in great measure by certain volumes which I found in his library. These were of a character to force into germination whatever seeds of hereditary superstition lay latent in my bosom. I had been reading these books without his knowledge, and thus he was often at a loss to account for the forcible impressions which had been made upon my fancy. A favourite topic with me was the popular belief in omens, a belief which, at this one epoch of my life, I was seriously disposed to defend. On this subject, we had long and animated discussions, he maintaining the utter groundlessness of faith in such matters, I contending that a popular sentiment arising with absolute spontaneity, that is to say, without apparent traces of suggestion, had in itself the unmistakable elements of truth, and was entitled to much respect. The fact is that soon after my arrival at the cottage, there had occurred to myself an incident so entirely inexplicable, and which had in it so much of the portentous character, that I might as well have been excused for regarding it as an omen. It appalled, and at the same time so confounded and bewildered me, that many days elapsed before I could make up any mind to communicate the circumstances to my friend. Near the close of an exceedingly warm day, I was sitting, book in hand, at an open window, commanding, through a long vista of the river banks, a view of a distant hill, on the face of which, nearest my position, had been denuded by what is termed a landslide of the principal portion of its trees. My thoughts had been long wandering from the volume before me to the gloom and the desolation of the neighbouring city. Uplifting my eyes from the page, they fell upon the naked face of the hill, and upon an object, upon some living monster of hideous conformation, which very rapidly made its way from the summit to the bottom, disappearing finally in the dense forest below. As this creature first came in sight, I doubted my own sanity, or at least the evidence of my own eyes, and many minutes passed before I succeeded in convincing myself that I was neither mad nor in a dream. And yet, when I described the monster, which I distinctly saw and calmly surveyed through the whole period of its progress, my readers, I fear, will feel more difficulty in being convinced of these points than even I did of myself. Yeah, sorry about the yawns. Estimating the size of the creature by comparison with the diameter of the large trees near which it passed, a few giants of the forest which had escaped the fury of the landslide, I concluded it to be far larger than any ship of the line in existence. I say ship of the line because the shape of the monster suggested the idea that the hull of one of our 74s might convey a very tolerable conception of the general outline. The mouth of the animal was situated at the extremity of a proboscis some 70 or 80 feet in length, and about as thick as the body of an ordinary elephant. Near the root of his trunk was an immense quantity of black shaggy hair, more than could have been supplied by the coats of a score of buffaloes, and projecting from this hair downwardly and laterally sprang two gleaming tusks, not unlike those of the wild boar, but of infinitely greater dimension. Extending forward, parallel with the proboscis, and on each side of it was a gigantic staff, 30 or 40 feet in length, forming seemingly of crystal, pure crystal, and in shape of perfect prism. It reflected in the most gorgeous manner the rays of the declining sun. The trunk was fashioned like a wedge, with the apex to the floor. From it there were outspread two pairs of wings, each wing nearly 100 yards in length, one pair being placed above the other, and all thickly covered with metal scales, each scale apparently some 10 or 12 feet in diameter. I observed that the upper and lower tiers of the windows were connected by a strong chain, but the chief peculiarity of this horrible thing was the representation of a death's head, which covered nearly the whole surface of its breast, and which was as accurately traced in glaring white upon the dark ground of the body, as if it had been there carefully designed by an artist. While I regarded this terrific animal, and more especially the appearance on its breast, with a feeling of horror and awe, with a sentiment of forthcoming evil which I found it impossible to quell by any effort of the reasons, I perceived the huge jaws at the extremity of the proboscis suddenly expand itself, and from them there proceeded a sound of loud and so expressive of woe that it strung upon my nerves like a knell, and as the monster disappeared at the foot of the hill, I fell at once fainting to the floor. Upon recovering, my first impulse, of course, was to inform my friend of what I had seen and heard, and I can scarcely explain what feeling of repugnance it was which, in the end, operated to prevent me. At length, one evening, some 3 or 4 days after the occurrence, we were sitting together in the room in which I had seen the apparition, I occupying the same seat at the same window, and he lounging on a sofa near at hand. The association of place and time impelled me to give him an account of the phenomenon. He heard me to the end, at first laughed heartily, and then lapsed into an excessively grave demeanour, as if my insanity was a thing beyond suspicion. At this instant I again had a distinct view of the monster, to which, with a shout of absolute terror, I now directed his attention. He looked eagerly, but maintained that he saw nothing, although I designated minutely the course of the creature as it made its way down the naked face of the hill. I was now immeasurably alarmed, for I considered the vision either as an omen of my death, or worse, as the forerunner of an attack of mania. I threw myself passionately back in my chair, and for some moments buried my face in my hands. And when I uncovered my eyes, the apparition was no longer visible. My host, however, had in some degree resumed the calmness of his demeanour, and questioned me very rigorously in respect to the conformation of the visionary creature. When I had fully satisfied him on this head, he sighed deeply as if relieved of some intolerable burden, and went on to talk with what I thought a cruel calmness of various points of speculative philosophy which had heretofore formed subject of discussion between us. I remember his insisting very especially, among other things, upon the idea that the principal source of error in all human investigations lay in the liability of the understanding to underrate or to overvalue the importance of an object through mere mismeasurement of its propinquity. To establish properly, for example, he said, the influence to be exercised on mankind at large by the thorough division of democracy, the distance of the epoch at which such fusion may be possibly accomplished shall not fail to form an item in the estimate. Yet, can you tell me one writer on the subject of government who has ever thought this particular branch of the subject worthy of a discussion at all? He here paused for a moment, stepped to a bookcase, and brought forth one of the ordinary synopses of natural history, and requesting me to then exchange seats with him, that he might the better distinguish the fine print of the volume, he took my armchair to the window and opened the book, resuming his discourse very much in the same tone as before. But for your exceeding minuteness, he said, in describing the monster, I might never have had it in my power to demonstrate to you what it was. In the first place, let me read to you a schoolboy account of the genus Sphinx, of the family Crepuscularia, of the order Lepidoptera, of the class Insecta, or insects. The account runs thus: 4 membranous wings covered with little coloured scales of metallic appearance, mouth forming a rolled proboscis, produced by an elongation of the jaws, upon the sides of which are found the rudiments of mandibles and downy palpi. The inferior rings retained to the superior by a stiff hair. Antenna in the form of an elongated club, prismatic, abdomen pointed. The death's head sphinx has occasionally much terror among the vulgar at times by the melancholy kind of cry which it utters, and the insignia of death which it wears upon its corslet. He here closed the book and leaned forward in the chair, placing himself accurately in the position which I had occupied at the moment of beholding the monster. And here it is, he presently explained. It is the reascending the face of the hill, and a very remarkable looking creature I admit it to be. Still, it is by no means so large or so distant as you imagined it, for the fact is that, as it wriggles its way up this thread, which some spider has wrought along the window sash, I find it to be about the 16th of an inch in its extreme length, and also about the 16th of an inch distant from the pupil of my eye. Well, what do we think of that? What do we think of that, chap? I beg your pardon, Jade. Denied. More feet. What are you talking about? Oh, what are you talking about? They're being rowdy, I can tell. All right. Alison, the man of the crowd, is coming up. Let's see how we do with this one, and then I might call it a night because it is late and I'm tired. Oh, don't start that bubbly now. Oh, please. Dealing with that is. It's almost midnight already. Yeah, well, it's 10:30 here. The man of the crowd, c'est grand malheur de ne pouvoir être seul. La prière. It was well said of a certain German book that lass sich nicht lesen, it does not permit itself to be read. Well, there are some secrets which do not permit themselves to be told. Men die nightly in their beds, wringing the hands of ghostly confessors and looking them piteously in the eyes, die with the despair of heart and convulsion of throat on account of the hideousness of mysteries which will not suffer themselves to be revealed. Now and then, alas, the conscience of man takes up a burden so heavy in horror that it can be thrown down only into the grave. And thus the essence of all crime is undivulged. Not long ago, about the closing in of an evening in autumn, I sat at the large bow window of the D Coffee House in London. For some months I'd been ill in health, but was now convalescent, and with returning strength found myself in one of those happy moods which are so precisely the converse of ennui, moods of the keenest appetency, when the film from the mental vision departs, the some Greek words, and the intellect electrified surpasses as greatly its everyday condition as does the vivid yet candid reason of Leibniz, the mad and flimsical rhetoric of Gorgias. Merely to breathe was enjoyment, and I derived positive pleasures even from many of the legitimate sources of pain. I felt a calm but inquisitive interest in everything. With a cigar in my mouth and a newspaper in my lap, I had been amusing myself for the greater part of the afternoon, now in poring over advertisements, now in observing the promiscuous company in the room, and now in peering through the smoky panes in the street. This latter one is one of the principal thoroughfares of the city, and had been very much crowded during the whole day. But as the darkness came on, the throng momently increased, and by the time the lamps were all lighted, two dense and continuous tides of population were rushing past at the door. At this particular period of evening, I had never before been in a similar situation, and the tumultuous sea of human heads filled me, therefore, with the delicious novelty of emotion. I gave up, at length, all care of things within the hotel, and became absorbed in contemplation of the scene without. At first, my observations took an abstract and generalizing turn. I looked at the passengers in masses, and thought of them in their aggregate relations. Soon, however, I descended to details and regarded with minute interest the innumerable varieties of figure, dress, air, gait, visage, and expression of countenance. By and by, the far greater number of those who went by had a satisfied, business-like demeanour, and seemed to be thinking only of making their way through the press. Their brows were knit, and their eyes rolled quickly when pushed against by fellow wayfarers. They evinced no symptom of impatience, but adjusted their clothes and hurried on. Others, still a numerous class, were restless in their movements, had flushed faces, and talked and gesticulated to each other, as if feeling in solitude on account of the very denseness of the company around. When impeded in their progress, these people suddenly ceased muttering, but redoubled their gesticulations, and waited, with an absent and overdone smile upon the lips, the course of the persons impeding them. If jostled, they bowed profusely to the jostlers, and appeared overwhelmed with confusion. There was nothing very distinctive about these two large classes beyond what I have noted. Their habiliments belonging to that order which is pointedly termed the decent. They were undoubtedly noblemen, merchants, attorneys, tradesmen, stock jobbers, the eupatrids and the commonplaces of society, men of leisure, and men actively engaged in affairs of their own, conducting business upon its own responsibility. They did not greatly excite my attention. The tribe of clerks was an obvious one, and here I discerned two remarkable divisions. There were the junior clerks of flash houses, young gentlemen with tight coats, bright boots, well-oiled hair, and supercilious lips, setting aside a certain dapperness of carriage, which may be termed a deschism, for want of a better word. The manner of these persons seemed to be an exact facsimile of what had been the perfection of bon ton about 12 or 18 months before. They wore the cast-off graces of gentry, and this, I believe, involves the best definition of the class. The division of the upper class clerks of much of staunch firms, or of the steady old fellows, it was not possible to mistake. These were known by their coats and pantaloons of black or brown, made to sit comfortably with white cravats and waistcoats, broad-looking shoes, and thick hose or gaiters. They had all slightly bald heads, from which the right ears, long used to pen-holding, had an odd habit of standing off on end. I observed that they always removed or settled their hats with both hands, and wore watches with short gold chains of substantial and ancient pattern. Theirs was the affectation of respectability, if indeed there be an affectation so honourable. There were many individuals of dashing appearance, whom I easily understood as belonging to the race of swelled pickpockets, with which all great cities are infested. I watched these gentry with much inquisitiveness, and found it difficult to imagine how they should ever be mistaken for gentlemen by gentlemen themselves. Their voluminousness of wristband, with an air of excessive frankness, should betray them once. The gamblers, of whom I described not a few, were still more easily recognizable. They wore every variety of dress, from that of the desperate thimble-rigged bully with a velvet waistcoat, fancy neckerchief, gilt chains, and filigree buttons, to that of the scrupulously inordinate clergyman, than which nothing could be less liable to suspicion. Still, all were distinguished by a certain odd swarthiness of complexion, a filmy dimness of eye, and a pallor and a compression of lip. There were two other traits, moreover, by which I could always detect them: a guarded knownness of tone in conversation, and a more than ordinary extension of the thumb in a direction at right angles with the finger. Very often, in company with these sharpers, I observed an order of men somewhat different in habits. But still birds of a kindred feather. They may be defined as the gentlemen who live by their wits. They seem to prey upon the public in two battalions, that of the dandies and that of the military men. Of the first grade, the leading features are Uh, of the first grade, the leading features are long locks and smiles. Of the second, frog coats and frowns. Descending in the scale of what is termed gentility, I found darker and deeper themes for speculation. I saw Jew peddlers with hawk eyes flashing from countenances whose every other feature wore only an expression of abject humility. Sturdy professional street beggars scowling upon the mendicaments of a better stamp from whom despair alone had driven forth into the night for charity. Feeble and ghastly invalids upon whom death had placed a sure hand, who sidled and tottered through the mob, looking everyone beseechingly in the face, as if in search of some chance consolation, some last hope. Modest young girls returning from long and late labour to a cheerless home, and shrinking more tearfully than indignantly from the glances of ruffians, whose direct contact, even, could not be avoided. The women of the town of all kinds and of all ages, the unequivocal beauty in the prime of her womanhood, putting one in the mind of the statue of Lucian, with the surface of the Parian marble, and the interior filled with filth. The loathsome and utterly lost leper in rags. The wrinkled, bejeweled, and paint-begrimed beldam, making a last effort at youth, the mere child of immature form, yet from long association an adept in the dreadful coquetries of her trade, and burning with a rabid ambition to be ranked the equal of her elders in vice, drunkards innumerable and indescribable, some in sheds and shreds and patches, reeling, inarticulate, with bruised visage and lacklustre eyes, some in whole, although filthy garments, with a slightly unsteady swagger, thick sensual lips, and hearty-looking rubicund faces. Others clothed in materials which had once been good and which now were scrupulously well brushed. Men who walked with a more than naturally firm and springy step, but those countenances were fearfully pale, whose eyes were hideously wild and red, and who clutched with quivering fingers as they strode through the crowd at every object which came within their reach. Beside these piemen, porters, coal heavers, sweeps, organ grinders, monkey exhibitors, and ballad mongers, those who vended with those who sang, ragged artisans and exhausted labourers of every description, and all full of a noisy, inordinate vivacity which jarred discordantly upon the ear and gave an aching sensation to the eye. As the night deepened, so deepened to me the interest of the scene, for not only did the general character of the crowd materially alter, its gentler features retiring in the gradual withdrawal of the more orderly portion of the people, and its harsher ones coming out into the relief, bolder relief as the late hour brought forth every species of infamy from its den. But the rays of the gas lamps, feeble at first in their struggle with the dying day, had now at length gained ascendancy, and threw every other thing a fitful and garish lustre. All was dark yet splendid, as that of ebony to which has been likened the style of Tertullian. The wild effects of the light enchained me to an examination of the individual faces, and although the rapidity with which the world of light flitted before the window prevented me from casting more than a glance upon each visage, still it seemed to me in my own then particular mental state, I could frequently read, even in that brief period of a glance, the history of long years. With my brow to the glass, I was thus occupied in scrutinizing the mob, when suddenly there came into view a countenance, that of a decrepit old man, some 65 or 70 years of age, a countenance which at once arrested and absorbed my whole attention, on account of the absolute idiosyncrasy of his expression. Anything even remotely resembling that expression I had never seen before. I well remember that my first thought upon beholding it was that wretch he had viewed it would have greatly preferred it to his own pictorial incarnations of a fiend. As I endeavoured, during the brief minute of our original survey, to form some analysis of the meaning conveyed, there arose confusedly and paradoxically within my mind the ideas of vast mental power, of caution, of penuriousness, of avarice, of coolness, of malice, of bloodthirstiness of triumph or merriment or excessive terror, of supreme despair. I felt singularly aroused, startled, fascinated. How wild is history, I said to myself, is written within that bosom. Then came a craving desire to keep the man in view, to know more of him. Hurriedly putting on an overcoat and seizing my hat and cane, I made my way into the street and pushed through the crowd in the direction which I had seen him take, for he had really disappeared. With some little difficulty, I at length came within sight of him, approached and followed him closely, yet cautiously, so as not to attract his attention. I had now a good opportunity for examining his person. He was short in stature, very thin, and apparently very feeble. His clothes, generally, were filthy and ragged, but as he came now and then within the strong glare of a lamp, I perceived that his linen, although dirty, was of a beautiful texture, and my vision to seize me all through a rent in the closely buttoned and evidently second-hand roquelaire which enveloped him, I caught a glimpse of both of a diamond and of a dagger. These observations heightened my curiosity, and I resolved to follow the stranger whithersoever he should go. It was now fully nightfall, and a thick, humid fog hung over the city. Soon ending in a settled and heavy rain. This change of weather had an odd effect upon the crowd, the whole of which was at once put into a new commotion, and overshadowed by a world of umbrellas. The waver, the jostle, and the hum increased in tenfold degree. For my part, I did not much regard the rain, the lurking of an old fever in my system rendering the moisture somewhat too dangerously pleasant. Tying a handkerchief about my mouth, I kept on. For half an hour the old man held his way with difficulty along the great thoroughfare, and here I walked close to his elbow through fear of losing sight of him. Never once turning his head to look back, he did not observe me. By and by he passed into a cross street, which, although densely filled with people, was not quite as much thronged as the main one he had quitted. Here a change in his demeanour became evident. He walked more slowly and with less object than before, more hesitatingly. He crossed and recrossed the way repeatedly, without apparent aim, and the press was still so thick that at every such movement I was obliged to follow him closely. The street was a narrow and long one, and his course lay within it for nearly half an hour, during which time the passengers had gradually diminished to about that number which is ordinarily seen at noon on Broadway near the Park. So vast a difference is there between a London populace and that of the most frequented American city. A second turn brought us into a square brilliantly lighted and overflowing with life. The old manner of the stranger reappeared. His chin fell upon his breast, and his eyes rolled wildly from under his knit brows in every direction. Upon whose he hemmed in, upon those he hemmed him in. He urged his way steadily and perseveringly. I was surprised, however, to find, upon his having made the circuit of the square, that he turned and retraced his steps. Still more was I astonished to see him repeat the same walk several times, once nearly detecting me as he came round with a sudden movement. In this exercise he spent half an hour, at the end of which we met with a far less interruption from passengers than at first. The rain fell asleep. The rain fell fast, the air grew cool, and the people retired to their homes. With a gesture of impatience, the wanderer passed into a by-street comparatively deserted. Down this, some quarter of a mile long, he rushed with an activity I could not have dreamed of seeing in one so aged, and which put me to much trouble in pursuit. A few minutes later brought us to a large and busy bazaar, with the localities of which the stranger appeared well acquainted, where his original demeanour again became more apparent as he forced his way to and fro without aim among the host of buyers and sellers. During the half hour hour and a half or half. During the hour and a half or thereabouts which we passed in this place, it required much caution on my part to keep him within reach without attracting his attention. Luckily, I wore a pair of caoutchouc overshoes and could move about in perfect silence. At no moment did he see that I watched him. He entered shop after shop, priced nothing, spoke no word, and looked at all the objects with a wild and vacant stare. I was now utterly amazed at his behaviour and firmly resolved that he should not part until I had satisfied myself in some measure expecting him. A loud tone clock struck 11, and the company were fast deserting the bazaar. A shopkeeper, in putting up a shutter, jostled the old man, and at that instant I saw a strong shudder come over his frame. He hurried into the street, looked anxiously around him for an instant, and then ran with incredible swiftness through many crooks and peopleless lanes until he emerged once more upon the great thoroughfare whence we had started, the Street of D Hotel. It no longer wore, however, the same aspect. It was still brilliant with gas, but the rain fell fiercely, and there were few persons to be seen. The stranger grew pale. He walked moodily some paces up the once populous avenue, then, with a heavy sigh, turned in the direction of the river, and plunging through a great variety of devious ways, came out at length in view of one of the most principal theatres. It was about being closed, and the audience were thronging from the doors. I saw the old man gasp as if air while he threw himself into the crowd, but I thought that was the intense body of his countenance had in some measure abated. His head again fell upon his breast. He appeared as I had seen him at first. I observed that he now took the course in which had gone the greater number of the audience, but upon the whole I was at a loss to comprehend the waywardness of his actions. As he proceeded, the company grew more scattered, and his old uneasiness and vacillation were resumed. For some time he followed closely a party of 10 or 12 roisterers, but from this number one by one dropped off, until 3 only remained together. In a narrow and gloomy lane, little frequented, the stranger paused, and for a moment seemed lost in thought, and then with every mark of agitation pursued rapidly a route which brought us to the verge of the city, uh, amid regions very different from those who had hitherto traversed. It was the most noisome quarter of London, where everything wore the worst impression of the most deplorable poverty and of the most desperate crime. By the dim light of an accidental lamp, tall, antique, worm-eaten wooden tenements were seen tottering uh, to their fall in directions so many and capricious that scarce the semblance of a passage was discernible between them. The paving stones lay at random, displaced from their beds by the rankly growing grass. Horrible filth festered in the dammed-up gutters. The whole atmosphere teemed with desolation. Yet, as we proceeded, the sounds of human life revived by certain degrees, and at length the large bands of the most abandoned of a London populace were seen reeling to and fro. The spirits of the old again flickered up, as a lamp which is near to its death hour. Once more he strode onward with a plastic thread. Was honoured with an elastic tread. Suddenly a corner was turned, a blaze of light burst upon our sight, and we stood before one of the huge suburban temples of Suddenly a corner was turned, a blaze of light burst upon his sight, and we stood before one of the huge suburban temples of intemperance, one of the places of the fiend, Gin. It was now nearly daybreak, but a number of wretched inebriates still pressed in and out of the flaunting entrance. With half a shriek of joy, the old man forced a passage within, resumed at once his original bearing, and stalked backward and forward without apparent object among the throng. He had not been thus long occupied, however, before a rush to the doors gave token that the host was closing them for the night. It was something even more intense than despair that when I observed upon the countenance of the singular with whom I had been watched so pertinaciously, Yet he did not hesitate. Yet he did not hesitate in his career, but with a mad energy retraced his steps at once to the heart of the mighty London. Long and swiftly he fled, which I followed in the wildest amazement, resolute not to abandon a scrutiny which I now felt an interest all absorbing. The sun arose while we proceeded, and when we had once again reached that most thronged mart of the populous town, the street of D Hotel, it presented an appearance of human bustle and activity scarcely inferior to what I had seen the evening before. And here, long amid the momently increasing confusion, did I persist in my pursuit of the stranger. But as usual, he walked to and fro, and during the day did not pass from out the turmoil of the street. And as the shades of the second evening came on, I grew wearied unto death, and stopping fully in front of the wanderer, gazed at him steadfastly in the face. He noticed me not, but resumed his solemn walk, while I, ceasing to follow, remained absorbed in contemplation. This old man, I said at length, is the type and genius of deep crime. He refused to be alone. He is the man of the crowd. It will be in vain to follow, for I shall learn no more of him nor his deeds. The worst heart of the world is a grosser book than Hortulus Animae, and perhaps it is but one of the great mercies of God that lässt sich nicht lesen. He cannot be read. All right, gang. I will have to call that a night. Oh, some lovely follows coming in there. Thanks to everybody for sharing your bits and your cheers this evening, and I appreciate also the subs. Because it's important for me to carry on. Thank you as always. Love your reading voice. Thank you. Namaste. That means the yoga is finished. So yeah, all senior citizens should be sleeping by now. Ha 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 ha. Funny. I need to look at my lines for tomorrow. I don't have too many, but still do a little bit of revision and then get to some sleep. What am I drinking? Fennel tea. One of my favorites. Thank you, Bublina. Thank you, Mimeron Pan. No, not fentanyl. Fennel. What is that in French? What is fennel in French? No, I'm shooting tomorrow, Magusa. Yeah, but I said he's alive and he's also dead. Fenui, yes, there we go. No, it's Fenui. But yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff. I mean, I think it's going to take the whole day. It's going to be a long day. Damn, our time's up tomorrow, lads and ladders. Yeah. No action scenes. No. Well, it depends on what kind of action you're talking about. Yeah. Talk to you guys in the morning. So, plan is we'll do another little bit of reading over the weekend to finish up with Poe for Easter. And then next week it's all grist to the mill. And so thanks for joining this evening. I'm going to need to check with Sally about availability and stuff. Good morning from Japan, innit? Morning. What are you having for breakfast, Jolly Hen? What's breakfast going to be in Japan? Question. Anybody else streaming? Can we raid someone, or is everybody tucked up nicely in bed? Wait, are you Hannah? Yeah, Sir Dunny. Okay, so we'll give. Thank you, Valeria. Oh, by the way, how many bosoms did we get in there? 3, 4? How many bosoms? We're up to 35. Are we? Only two? We only had two bosoms, not the whole thing. Okay. Two more bosoms. All right. So we're up to 35. We got a lot of breasts tonight. This is true. A lot of breasts. So many boobies. Blue boobies. Lovely bird. Okay, you get back to your NASA launch prep. I'm not sure that I will be staying awake for that. However, we'll see. All right, gang. Raids coming in. / raid. Sir Journey. Is that right? Is that how you spell it? Okay, here we go. 19 viewers, 23 viewers, 7 seconds, 6, 5. It's almost like the launch of the NASA. 3, 2, 1. We have liftoff. Raid now, raid, raid, raid.